What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite pond, the Coy Pond, episode 84. You know you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and as always, leave a question on SpeakPipe. We wouldn't mind answering a couple questions from time to time, but I understand it's a little daunting putting your voice out there. As always, I'm joined by my co-host K-Dog. I am Colin, and don't forget, we got some merch. We got some merch. Hey. Take it if you like it. 4th of July around the corner. What screams USA like the Coy Pond?
Hey, I'm telling you what.
Hey, it's not spelled with a K. That's all I'm saying. It's got a Y. It sounds like how it's spelled. It's just that easy. No shade thrown.
And my koozies are on order. They
yes,
have not
koozies.
Come in yet. So
koozies.
Getting excited about that. Excited about some merch coming.
Oh, yeah.
Testing the store myself just to see.
We gotta make sure and test the waters, no pun intended. And,
Pun intended.
We had our 100 subscriber special last week. Appreciate everyone that watched that. We still got up to 120 subscribers. Where we're at currently. Amazing. Thank you all so much.
Rolling on.
We keep rolling, and don't worry, this week it's only football. We won't bore you too much.
Football.
Yes, I'm out here begging for it. It can't get here soon enough.
That's right.
And
now is a real scary time for teams. Because for the next 6 weeks, all these young players, millionaires, have nothing to do for 6 weeks, basically.
Yes.
The OTAs are done before training camp starts, and this is usually when people fuck up.
Oh, boy. Here we go. We got something to look forward to, as in getting in trouble getting injured on their own workouts.
Yep.
Stuff of that nature, I would assume. If you're Shamar Stewart, even getting signed. That's still up in the air. You've seen it everywhere, the contract crap. Interesting situation, no doubt.
Yep.
They got 6 weeks to hopefully figure it out, but it would be hilarious if you went back in the draft.
Crazy, huh?
Leave it to the Bengals, but I'm fairly confident they'll figure that out.
I would think so.
I would have to imagine maybe they're dealing with Trey first, and then they're going to come back to Stewart, but
yeah, could be.
I don't know jack shit. We'll have to see if this might be a first time. I guess I don't know. Bad podcasting. I should have looked this up. I just started talking. Would this potentially be the first time this ever happens?
I think so.
Where a player goes back into the draft, but the only stipulation if it happened is that the Bengals can't take him in the next draft.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. I'm completely blowing this out of the water.
That'd be wild, though.
I'm sure he'll be signed in 2 weeks, but it would be crazy.
You never know.
I'm not rooting for history, but
yeah,
I'm rooting for history. As you can tell by the thumbnail, this week we're going over the Cowboys and keys to success for this upcoming season.
Keys to success.
Looking back at 2024, maybe not how Cowboys fans wanted it to go.
Not in the least.
Not too much to be thrilled about. I don't even want to say except for, and additional to their own team problems, the Commanders got a lot better.
Yeah, so it just compounded the damn thing.
It kind of made it seem not just doom and gloom, but
doom. Doomy gloom, yeah.
Doom. It's just doom.
So now where are you
running on
be?
fumes.
Third? What else you got in there?
I don't know. I was trying to think of a quick rhyme while you talked. I had nothing.
Did you select the pitcher Tom Hume?
Yeah, maybe. I won't give it up just yet. Maybe I'll just rhyme the whole episode and won't give into the conversation at all.
Yeah, while I do think the Cowboys will stay ahead of the Giants. I'm not concerned about that one.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Did the Cowboys get better? Yes. Did the Redskin Commanders get better? Yes. Did the Eagles get better? Yes, I would say. So that doesn't really add up to a whole lot of vertical movement for the Cowboys unless somebody gets hurt, something happens, the Cowboys click extra well, which is possible.
It's not out of the realm.
No.
But new coach.
Well, and a lot of times, so key number one.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, nice lead in. Because a lot of times you get a team that's kind of, was doing well. I mean, they had 12-5, 12-5, 12-5.
The regular season records have been good.
Yeah. And so Mike McCarthy had them going well. Then last year, they come out of the gate, started with the contract negotiations that drug on through the preseason.
Yes.
And why in the hell the Cowboys waited so long to do that? I understand you're trying to see where contracts are and all that shit. But when you did it right before the start, you kept your your quarterback and your number one receiver from really spending as much time together as they needed to.
Yep.
And it showed right out of the gate.
It really did.
I mean, fortunately for them, they started with Cleveland, and
That's a big of a mess as you can
Cleveland
have.
just has their challenges, but
Right.
it reared its ugly head in week 2 when the Saints obliterated Dallas in Dallas.
Yeah, that was not the start we expected, especially because the previous season, I think they were like 8-1, 9-1 at home.
Fast start,
Yeah.
great at home, and that just that second week just kind of seemed to set the tone for a shitty season. Really, they never really got back around to it.
They really didn't. That was a rough way to start it at home, and then this conversation started about what's the problem.
Yep.
As soon as the season starts.
And that lag, you go back to the Green Bay playoff game.
Oh my God.
At the end of the season before at Dallas, and that is where the home advantage was lost to begin with.
You're not wrong.
And it just struck on. I mean, the streak continued from that.
Well, they would go on top of the Saints to go 1-5 at home. Their first 6 home appearances, and that was loud. I remember that being loud up until they finally won the game, and I don't remember who it was. But
might have been the Panthers or some shit like that.
I
don't know. But yeah, so clearly the team was kind of not responding to Mike McCarthy.
Nope.
And so they did rally. They came back around, but it was already too late. So Brian Schottenheimer comes in at a good time. It was a good time to make the change. You can see the lack of response to the team.
Yep.
To Mike McCarthy again. A new coach gets new attention. Everybody sits up a little bit, right? And so I would fully expect that he's going to get a first-year pop. The teams aren't going to know what he's doing,
right?
Because they haven't seen it.
Yep.
I've seen some of it from him being OC for the Cowboys for 3 years, I think. But, I mean, a lifetime coordinator, lifetime assistant, who finally gets, I would say, a well-deserved shot to be a head coach. Comes from a great lineage with Marty Schottenheimer.
I was going to say, you throw in Marty, that's enough to get you in the spot, but he's already earned the spot.
Yep. So he's seen it all. Mm-hmm. He's just never gotten over the hump, and so Marty never did. But here comes Brian now, and maybe he's seen enough that gives him that experience to be a little bit more.
Right.
Maybe he comes in at the right time with Dak, with the acquisition of George Pickens.
Yep.
They get maybe a resurging running game, which they lacked sorely last year.
It was rough.
Which was just a colossal disaster.
I mean, people knew that going into the season.
And they did nothing about it,
No attention to the running back room. I mean, it was Ezekiel Elliott and Dowdle.
Rico Dowdle,
who ended up being okay. Yeah. I mean, it was what people expected.
Took a while to get it going, though.
Right, and it did take several weeks before he got there, even.
Yeah. So, they have the revamped offensive line.
Yep.
So they're going to go back to the running game, clearly.
Good.
I think, Brian Schottenheimer's decision to do that is what they need to do. Tyler Guyton at left tackle, how does he develop and come along? You got a new right guard from Alabama.
Love
with
that.
Zach Martin gone, the long-time all-world.
An immediate hole that needs to be filled because Dak's had him for 4 or 5 years now and hasn't been a problem, and all of a sudden, that's gone.
Yep. So, Tyler Booker comes in, big shoes to fill. Tyler Smith at left guard. Tyler Guyton left tackle. I mean, it's the Tyler line, right?
It really is, and you got to hope that, and you expect Zach Martin to pass on those things to the guys next up, and they'll pass it on to who the Cowboys just picked up in the draft.
Yeah.
But, man, that's daunting out of the gate.
So, Miles Sanders, you got Javonte Williams.
Yeah, Miles Sanders. That's hilarious. I always forget that he's still in the league.
So, we'll see. I mean, they definitely have better backs than they had last year.
Without a doubt.
If the line gets it together, that could really work.
Was it Javonte Williams they picked up from the Broncos?
Yeah.
And who knows if it was just the way the Broncos ran the ball, because they seemed to do a lot with 3 different running backs throughout the season. It was mostly Javonte who started out. Then by the end, it was like you could pick one of the 3 to score. But I thought he performed a lot better than most people expected him to. Now, does that mean he was great? No. Sure. But I think he exceeded expectations. So I'm curious the difference between Denver and the Cowboys, if he's going to be running back 1.
Yeah.
I kind of expect him to be.
Yeah, I don't know if he will be or not.
Maybe it's the opposite. I'm kind of speaking out of my ass right now.
It'll be interesting.
Even if they do the same sort of they have the same structure as the Broncos did, where you kind of rotate them in and out.
I think that's what it's going to be.
I wouldn't hate that.
No.
That's better than last year by a mile.
Yeah, I agree. it was so bad last year. I mean, Mike McCarthy was putting Cavante Turpin
That's right.
as a straight up running back in the backfield and running sweeps with him.
We love Turpin, but
that's how bad it was.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah. So that leads us to the next key.
Yes.
Which is Dak staying healthy. And if he goes down, the problem now is Cooper Rush is gone.
Yeah.
So they got Joe Milton from the Patriots.
Right.
And he's just as good as Cooper Rush, but we just don't know for sure. So keeping Dak upright, the offensive line play, the running game, keep the heat off him. Because he's starting to get into that. I think he just turned 32. This is his 10th year in the NFL.
That's crazy to think about.
So it's time to put up or shut up, really.
Yeah, getting to that point, and it's like he might get Tony Romo'd if he's not careful.
That's right. I mean, Romo got to that point where his body just couldn't take it, and we've seen now this is the second time Dak's had
multiple long. How do you want to say it? Oh my God, why I'm thinking of the word long-term injury.
Long-term injury
during the season, and it kind of derails the Cowboys. And actually, Cooper Rush, the couple times it happened,
kept a hell of a job.
Kept him more in it than most backups could have.
And again, he's gone with the Ravens, so hopefully Joe Milton is good in there and ready to go.
You would hope. He's still a young guy on the Patriots before they picked up Drake May, and then they kind of officially went with Drake May when the time showed itself.
Yeah,
but not a bad person. The backup, I think he's got one hell of an arm, is what I remember from Milton's.
Big dude too. I think he's like 6'4" and like 235, something like that.
Be interesting to see him in a Cowboys uniform, but you have to just keep Dak healthy.
Got to. It's so important.
Across everything else, it's been his ankle and
broken leg
and ankle, right?
I think so.
Were the two. So Lord Almighty.
Yeah,
those are
the back's the next one, and once the back thing hits. That's where you start saying this is limited time here.
Right, he can only twist that body so many more times before he snaps like a Lego piece.
It was interesting too. I was watching series this last week. Reeves watching it from a few years ago.
Yeah,
and they were showing the Cowboys in the draft in 2016 when they did take Dak and Zeke. And as the Cowboys, they were trying to get Paxton Lynch.
Right, that's
right. And the Cowboys were all pissy that they didn't get him and it didn't work out. And then it kind of goes around to the fourth round, and they're like talking about Dak, and you hear Stephen Jones say, Tony's got some injuries now, and we've got to make some decisions here, and so there it was. They actually discussed it in the room.
Yeah,
which I'd never seen that before.
That's pretty cool.
So Dak definitely. We just said it about the start.
Yes.
Last year they were screwed from the beginning.
That was so bad.
So they got to come out of the gate, and you got to run off with a tough schedule that they have. Eagles have the same tough schedule. Redskin Commanders have the same tough schedule because they're all in the same division.
Yep.
But Cowboys got to come out and go like 6-1, 6-2, 7-2.
Right. With the non-divisional games, you've got to have a strong one to be competitive in the NFC East right now.
Yeah.
Especially after years of it being a couple years of it being NFC least, I think is what the joke was. Commanders, we have to expect, you got to play them tough at home, and divisional games always are.
Yeah.
But you just can't be giving up the home games because
then
that forces you to go on the road to the Eagles like they did in the last week of the season, or second to last week of the season, and just not good things. And that one might have been at home. I might be
not good at all for sure.
Hot start.
And again, go back and revisit no team in the NFC East has consecutively won the division title in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Some crazy shit. Dallas going to be the sleeper to do that is Washington, but it's hard to imagine that it's not going to be the Eagles winning it again.
It is tough, and I still believe in that stupid thing, so I have to imagine Commanders or Cowboys. The problem is now, though, the Commanders are the second favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And, pray on a sophomore slump all you want. Who knows what that team looks like now that they've got Debo.
I really don't. Yeah, Cowboys struggled to face him in San Francisco. Now they're going to see him twice a year.
Yep.
So that's not good.
That's a bad look.
And I don't see Jaden Daniels taking a step back in his sophomore year. I just don't.
It doesn't feel like one of those quarterbacks that just kind of emerged and did it. He worked up through the season and then just got more amazing as each week went on.
Yep. I would totally say that he would put up at least the same, if not better, than what he did last year.
I could definitely see that.
He just seems like that kind of a player. He's got such a great approach to how he does things.
People will look back on his career, and they'll go, after that Chicago Bears Hail Mary, he became a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And they'll have 10 seasons of just craziness. Probably a hot take, but, it would be hilarious to be able to say that was the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be shocked if he doesn't at least win one Super Bowl in his career.
Shocked. He's so good.
Yeah.
What a season.
Yeah. And again, Deebo Samuel added him to the mix. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better.
No.
Wide receiver 1 and 2 are Scary Terry and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
It really is.
And that's in your division. Thank God.
Great job.
I've only got Patrick Mahomes and an emerging Drew Lock.
Yeah.
We're not talking about Chargers.
But again, we did talk about George Pickens, and
he's
another key to this. What can he do to take the heat off of CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb runs every conceivable route under the sun.
Yes.
George Pickens talked about, how great that is because it allows him to kind of do what he does.
Yep.
A lot of times your receiver 1 does 1 or 2 things really well, crossing routes or fly routes or whatever. And apparently CeeDee Lamb does it all. So George Pickens, they can use him in a multitude of ways then.
Yes.
We'll see how that works.
We really will. And one thing to keep in mind is Pittsburgh media seem to just eat up George Pickens.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if that added to some of the stuff he dealt with in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Now he goes to America's team, one of the most viewed and watched teams in the NFL as a whole every year. And as long as that media stays good, he's in a good spot.
Yeah.
I don't think being wide receiver 2 on the Cowboys is a bad thing for him.
No.
But he needs to be able to handle himself, which he has not done at any point at his time on the Steelers. But being wide receiver 2 might take some of that heat of the expectations where he is more comfortable in a role where people aren't expecting crazy games, then he gives them crazy games because everyone's focused on CD. The Cowboys are one of those teams that has a quarterback that can throw him the ball, that has a wide receiver 1 that he can't leap and bounds over.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the star of the offense anymore. He's simply just another piece. And taking that backseat role compared to the Steelers, I think is only going to help him more.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised. No, I would not be surprised. As long as CD can mentor him in a way that keeps him under the radar in Dallas, the way CD's not ended up in headlines in a bad,
relationship with
them, I think that will do numbers for George Pickens down the road when we're looking back at this Week 10.
I think, too, CeeDee Lamb right out of the gate, they were interviewing him, and as soon as they signed George Pickens, and they said, there's not a 1 and a 2, there's 2 1s.
Yes.
And so the fact that he's
viewing it as that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably helps George Pickens not have to.
He doesn't feel like he's less.
Pump his ego or whatever like that, and maybe that lets them get off on a better foot together.
For George Pickens' sake, I'm hoping, because I do feel bad is the wrong way to put it, but he hasn't had a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think it was like Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and maybe I'm forgetting one more if he's been in the season for 3 years, but it might have only been 2.
Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how he does with Dak.
Yeah.
Now that he won't be overthrown every single time the ball comes his way.
Yeah. Matt Eberflus is back.
Yes, that's right.
Speaking of the Hail Mary.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So, defensively, Cowboys can only go up for what they did last year.
Yes.
They were not, would you say, as far as the stats?
For the defense?
Yeah.
The Cowboys let up the 5th most yards per game against them. So they were 28th in defense, if you sort by yards per game against, which is actually horrific. I didn't realize that the Cowboys' defense
was that bad.
Was letting up that many yards.
Yeah.
And, part of that goes into they were in a lot of high-scoring games. Mm-hmm. Some of them they scored high, too. But that's a rough stat, given Micah Parsons was out for a good amount of the year,
I thought. Demarion Overshown hurt at the beginning, hurt at the end. If that kid could stay healthy,
he's a demon.
He's crazy how he can move around out there.
And that's the difference between the Cowboys defense I think we saw 2 years ago and the defense we saw last year.
Right.
Same health issues, except now, this past season, it was, we talked about Dak, but also key people on the defense.
Yeah.
And, I think they might have, who's the guy that went to the Seahawks that was talking beef with Micah Parsons at one point, DeMarcus Lawrence?
Yes. Yep.
Did he have injury issues?
I think he had some as well.
Because I think he might have. And, hopefully with the offseason, I don't remember off the top of my head all the transactions they've made, but maybe they've gotten rid of some of that. And, I'm sure health injuries are so, I wouldn't say
Hard to-
random, but
hard to
it's hard.
predict.
You
Yeah.
can't predict them.
Yeah.
So maybe this year they'll get a little bit more lucky and won't get hit quite as hard for as long.
Yep. Yeah, they made some good free agency pickups on defense. Got a linebacker, Jack Sanborn from the Bears,
Okay.
who kind of has a Sean Lee thing to him a bit.
I don't hate that.
Picked up a corner, former top-round pick from the Bills.
Okay.
I forget his name offhand, but they've got him in the mix. So got a few,
A couple new guys.
a couple additions
refreshing.
to kind of fit with Eberflus defense.
It sounds like DeMarcus Lawrence maybe wasn't the greatest locker room guy,
You know,
potentially.
there's a video that recently surfaced of he and Parsons getting into a fight in the locker room or on the practice field.
And
So
that doesn't help.
No.
So maybe that was a known issue, and they're like, hey, you got one more season. It didn't work out.
yeah,
See you later.
yeah.
Sounds like that might maybe not cut out the cancer, but it wasn't meshing. Clearly.
No, let's hope. And to your point, while we're bringing up Micah Parsons, he's this year's CD Lamb for contract.
Yes.
So no deal yet, and we'll see how this goes. And I hope that they don't allow
Prolong
that
it.
to go to the last minute like CD to where it becomes a distraction.
Yes. Oh, my God. I mean,
That's going to have an impact on how they start.
Lord knows the ESPN, NFL Network, us, anybody will pick up that headline, run with it because it is such a big deal
Yeah.
to have one of the best defensive players in the NFL
Yep.
not getting signed to the team yet.
Yeah, not good.
And like you said, the longer that draws on, the worse the headlines get. And,
Yeah.
Who knows how much these players really look at that. But you have to imagine some of it sneaks through the locker room at some
Yeah.
point.
Yep. And again, they did have a pretty good draft on defense. They got the edge rusher that I'm excited about. Can't pronounce his name,
We love them.
but we love him. And I think they got a great pick there, and we're going to see where it goes. So
That's the thing, is it seems like they addressed some issues. They, got George Pickens, wasn't the wide receiver 1/2 that most Cowboys fans wanted, but it's better than Brandon Cooks, Tyler Guyton,
yeah,
or maybe that was his name. I might have been mixing that up.
Yeah.
But there's been a few wide receivers on the Cowboys along CeeDee Lamb that have done really well.
yeah,
Turpin's still there, I think, right?
yeah.
Thank God. I love that guy.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
But having George Pickens as another known threat will,
Right.
I think, do a lot.
I think so too, and they just didn't have that.
And a running back room that can draw a little attention
Yeah.
is way better than it being Ezekiel Elliott,
Yeah,
Dottle, and someone else that I'm completely forgetting that was probably on the depth chart. I apologize.
totally
but
right. And the last piece that to me comes back to is the key is, if you haven't seen Jimmy Johnson's Hall of Fame speech,
Oh, yeah.
I would recommend you go take a look at it. There's a part there where he talks about believing. Some people wish or hope, and he goes through this thing. He goes, I didn't hope. He goes, when you hope or wish, you just kind of, maybe it'll happen and maybe it don't.
Right.
But he said, maybe it won't. So, but when you believe, he goes, you work hard because you're saying it's going to happen.
Yes.
And so you do everything from here to there to make it so. And he's like, I worked harder. We worked harder than anybody else. And that's how we got where we were going. And Brian Schottenheimer's saying the right things, but that just drive and I will not fail. That was
Yes.
Jimmy Johnson. I will not fail. We will succeed, because he believed it. And to hear him talk about that and just how much that drove him as a coach,
Yes.
to an exhausting level,
Right.
but to the results to win the Super Bowl.
Exactly. And you have to think, to come back to it, Schottenheimer's feeling some sort of pressure is probably the wrong word, but some sort of responsibility to get over the hump like his dad never did.
Right.
And to at least do, expect half the results for twice as much work.
Yeah.
There has to be some mix in there that he personally feels that we can only hope he applies.
Yeah.
Because Eberflus is a great person to have in your back pocket with some head coaching experience of what not to do exactly.
That's
But
right.
He also had some good Bears defenses, to be completely honest.
No doubt about it.
And if he can just assist Schottenheimer, and we haven't heard Brian come out and say anything terrible yet or wrong, or
No.
he's not Gerard Mayo coming out saying, well, once they hit the field, I can't coach him anymore.
Right.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy headlines.
No. He's saying all the right things.
We just got to hope. That
Yep.
there's, you would assume there's some personal feeling there with his dad doing what he did.
I would think.
That he feels like he has to do better.
Yep.
Or, some version of that.
He wants to win it for his family. He wants
Yes.
to win it for his dad that never did. That's a pretty powerful thing, I would think.
I would assume.
And then when you throw on top of there the drought with the Cowboys, to be able to be the one to do that way too, I mean, it hits him a couple different ways, but I'm sure that dad thing is really powerful.
That's what I'm hoping. And, I don't think Brian Schottenheimer was the coach everyone was expecting or wanting when this was going on. I think it was, you had Vrabel and you had Bill Belichick in the mix. And
that's right.
That was getting loud for a little bit. And then, like, Schottenheimer, everyone's like, who? I thought he died.
Yeah.
And, no, it's the son. And everyone was like,
Yeah.
So I like that that's who they went with. I'm really hoping for the best for him. The position he is in is not ideal, but that plays into his hand a little bit with how you take it. So,
but I really do think if he's going to do it, it's like when Dak and Zeke came in the league in 2016.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers ripped out their hearts with a sideline pass. Whew. They were on their way to winning the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, new. The first year you get that turn, everybody sits up in their seats.
Yep.
They're paying attention. The little details are all being sawn through in practice and so forth. And I just think he's got to do it in this first year.
I completely agree.
You get that turn and take that full snap.
Yes.
I think the first year you got to do it, and especially with the Cowboys spending a little bit of money to get Pickens and some players around.
Yes.
So
I completely agree, and I'm hoping that there's no way that home field that there are
bugaboos.
Home game doesn't go as bad out of the gate. We're not doing a schedule review, so I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I just feel like this may not be their year out of the gate, but this has to be a year that they show that they're not still on the decline.
What that was, yeah.
Yes.
And to your point, I think winning, coming out hot the first game at home, and blowing out whoever you got, get a solid win.
You need to start it with that home game expectation that the Cowboys will be 8-0 with the Dallas crowd that's there as you expect them to be.
Yep, because you got to get rid of the demons from that. Last year and the playoff the year before.
Yeah,
so
I completely agree. The Cowboys will have to see what they do.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how they use Turpin, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm looking to see if we'll get our new version of Sean Lee or someone else on defense this year.
Yep.
It's always fun to watch.
And will Brandon Aubrey, will he kick a 70-yarder this year?
Yes. That is... I'll have to look to see if we can find a future on that.
Yeah.
But
highly doable.
He got 69 last year?
I don't remember if it was 66.
66. I remember being high 60s, and there was a point towards the end of the season where he had an opportunity that they didn't take, probably. Yeah. But that was the talk of the town. Kickers last year were crazy. I'm excited for him.
And Aubrey and Turpin both came from the UFL.
Oh, that's funny.
Great pickups. So and right now as we speak, the Cowboys I think what's regarded as one of the best run stoppers from the UFL visiting at the Star. So
that'd be pretty cool.
They've had pretty good luck with that, so I'm hoping that maybe they do. And run stopping defensive tackles is something they sorely need, so I hope that works out.
And depending on how the season goes, how do you expect Jerry to be with the media this year?
Yeah.
Last year it felt a little louder than usual. I think that was along the same line that the previous owner, Snyder, leaked a bunch of photos, and, that went the way it did with Jerry. I'm curious if he's learned anything yet. It's been however many years with the Cowboys, he probably hasn't. But if we'll see him not quite as much in the media creating headlines that aren't helping the team.
You just
have to imagine that was addressed.
Yeah. And you just have to kind of wonder. I mean, the Cowboys are a family affair for the Jones family. Jerry, I don't know how old he is, but he's getting up there. And you can see even when he walks, he walks kind of, stiffer than he used to.
A little older.
And I keep just wondering, when is it when is it that's it for Jerry? And maybe he, God forbid something happens or takes a seat back and I'm just wondering if that's not this season because, you just kind of watch how he is and watch how he carries himself. That kind of tension and animosity with the press, I think is kind of showing you a sign of he's kind of getting to the point where maybe he doesn't want to deal with this shit anymore.
Maybe we start seeing one of the older sons start taking
Steven.
on the face, and Jerry can be money bags, but more hands off in the sense of media.
Because there will come a time where he won't be able to do it in a correct way.
Yes,
and I think there were glimpses of that last year. And I just wonder about it.
Well, what made me think, too, is with Jim Irsay, rest in peace, passing away, does that in any stretch of the imagination, give him not a wake-up call, because that's not right, but give him a new perspective on maybe I should start backing up a little bit, because to their credit, Jim Irsay had his 3 daughters worked, well in, and so does Jerry Jones. I'm not saying he doesn't.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see, I can't remember the older son's name.
Yeah, Steven.
A little bit more around.
Yeah.
He has been, but more with the media.
Yeah.
The headlines have him up there.
Right. And I don't know if it's, he's at the press conferences most of the time.
You always see him off to the side.
But Jerry's the one that gets attacked after the games, and nothing worse than having to answer questions right after an emotional whatever happened.
And it's going to get harder for him to probably hide. And I think with all the headlines we saw last year, we might have seen a little glimpse of that, where he's like, you know what, fuck you.
I'll fucking fire you, right? On the radio station, we all heard that one.
I have to think the Joneses, a family, said, Jerry, maybe we start only doing every other week, or the home games, or after the wins.
I think to your point, we're going to see some kind of transition with who's kind of the figurehead.
Right.
Going to pull back just a little bit because it has to. And is it going to be Steven? Probably so.
Yeah.
So
we'll have to see.
Interesting, though, to think about all that.
It really is. That's where my mind kind of goes, because it doesn't affect the team as a whole, but those headlines, when it's getting loud for a team, they're not great. And I don't know how George Pickens would react to Jerry Jones saying,
"Oh yeah,
fucking disappointment."
Yeah.
God.
And you could totally hear him doing that.
Yeah, or some just backhanded compliment where he's like, "Well, if George would have caught the ball."
Yeah. Oh my gosh, exactly right.
That would be bad.
Yep.
And that's the only scary part about George Pickens for me being in Dallas now.
Yeah.
Is the owner is a little bit more vocal than the Steelers owner was. But Steelers media is a little bit more ruthless.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I would say the other thing maybe to help Pickens is that in Dallas there's always noise. So does it help kind of drown him out a hair?
It's a little bit more numbing.
Where in Pittsburgh, it's a little easier to get right out to the surface of the press.
Yes, and they have, I don't want to talk in Pittsburgh. I don't need people attacking me, but it does feel more right at him the couple years that it was. And on the Cowboys, it'll be a little bit at Dak, CD, maybe Javonte Williams with a fumble, and
Micah Parsons' contract at the start of the year.
He has no opportunity to be number 1.
Yeah. He'll
be 2, 3, maybe 4 in the news headlines for his
own
own sake, which will be better because it's more drowned out.
Yeah, totally so.
Oh my gosh.
That's pretty much what I have.
That's what you got?
I'm gonna number 84 for the Cowboys.
Yes.
One of my favorites, tight end of the 80s, Doug Cosby.
Doug Cosby.
Yeah. So
wow.
He played probably from late 70s to maybe about, I don't know if he played till 85, 86, something like that. But he was a go-to guy for Danny White for many years there, and so gotta like that.
Heck yeah. 84 for the Chargers. Not very many of them that I know or recognize, but most recently last year, tight end Stone Smart, number 84.
Oh.
Not magical necessarily, but well-built dude. He was there for Herbert a couple times that he caught the ball, but I like the name too.
That's a good name.
Stone Smart.
Stone Smart?
Yeah.
Wow, I like that.
It took 2 nouns basically. A noun and an adjective. I don't know how they would have come up with that, but hey, kudos to him.
Yeah.
He came in a couple times clutch.
Right on.
There you go, Stone.
There it is.
I don't know if anybody else would call you out for 84, but for the Chargers, I got you. Because
very sweet.
Once again, not too many memorable 84s on the Chargers. But
sure.
I'm sure there's some person out there that, diehard Chargers fan from San Diego that's gritting his teeth with me
How
forgetting.
can you not remember?
Yeah, no, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we got for you guys this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do probably Chargers key to success. Keep it easy.
Yeah.
And then at some point here, we'll dive into some divisions. But, it's the off season.
We're working through the 6 weeks, just like the players.
Working through it, and we'll get there nonetheless. Everyone have a safe week, and we'll see you next time on the Coy Pond.
See ya.
Peace.